The SEC has appealed the Ripple SEC case. In this video, I want to go over exactly what that means for Ripple and XRP moving forward. What are the new timelines associated with this case ending? What does this mean in terms of a best case scenario and a worst case scenario? In this video, I want to show you all the most important things you need to understand right now about this appeal. So make sure to stick around for this whole thing. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. Thank you to everyone who takes the time to like these videos and subscribe to the channel. These two simple things really do mean so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP, make sure to check out my favorite exchange, Uphold, down in the description of this video. With that said, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start this video off and say, obviously, I got this wrong. I did not think the SEC was going to be appealing this case. A lot of smart people did think the SEC was going to be appealing this case. I wanted to go against the grain. I wanted to go against the consensus. I thought this was going to create too much of a mess for the SEC, and I thought they had stronger cases to pursue. Obviously, I got that wrong, and I just want to admit that here because I always said I would, and I don't want to run away from that. I want to talk about what's actually important, though, and that's what this means for Ripple and XRP going forward. I know a lot of people are really concerned that XRP is going to be missing out on the next bull market or something like that. I don't think that's the case. If you take a look at the XRP price chart, XRP went on a parabolic move back in 2021, 2022. That was in the middle of the original Ripple SEC case. That was before we knew XRP was not a security, and that doesn't change with this appeal. So I really don't think there's any reason XRP can't still participate in the upcoming bull market, and it's something I'm relatively not that worried about. With that said, I want to show you Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart Alderoty's response to this appeal on X. I think it's really important that we take a look at what they have to say when it comes down to this, and then we're going to talk about best and worst case scenarios, timelines, and everything like that. So Brad Garlinghouse came out and said, if Gensler and the SEC were rational, they would have moved on from this case long ago. It certainly hasn't protected investors and instead has damaged the credibility and reputation of the SEC. Somehow they still haven't gotten the message. They lost on everything that matters. Ripple, the crypto industry, and the rule of law have already prevailed. While we'll fight in court as long as we need, it's clear. XRP's status as not a security is the law of the land today, and it does not change even in the face of this misguiding and infuriating appeal. Remember, when the SEC tried unsuccessfully to file an interlocutory appeal, they made it clear that they had no intention of challenging XRP's status as a non-security. So I think that's the first big thing we need to take away here. The SEC is not appealing that XRP is a security. That is out the door. The SEC already admitted in the Binance case that the crypto assets themselves are not securities. The SEC admitted in the Ripple case that it was misguided to call XRP a security. XRP is not a security, and that's not changing. What exactly the SEC is going to appeal, that's still up in the air. We just know that the SEC is appealing. It's probably going to be programmatic sales or the sales in which Ripple is selling XRP to exchanges. What does that mean for XRP moving forward? We have to wait and see. But it's important to understand that the XRP you and I own is never going to be a security, and XRP itself is not a security, which essentially gets rid of the black swan scenario. We have talked about this a lot on the channel, but it's important to reiterate this because I know a lot of people are wondering, can XRP still be a security? Absolutely not. The SEC cannot appeal that. Now, that said, I want to get into what Stuart Alderoty had to say about this, who is Ripple's head of their legal counsel. So Stuart Alderoty said the SEC's decision to appeal is disappointing, but not surprising. This just prolongs what's already a complete embarrassment for the agency. The court has already rejected the SEC's suggestion that Ripple acted recklessly and there was no allegations of fraud, and of course, there was no victims or losses. Instead of faithfully applying the law, the agency under this chair continues to engage in litigation warfare against the industry. We are evaluating whether to file a cross appeal. Either way, the SEC's lawsuit has been irrational and misguided from the start, and we're ready to prove that yet again in the appellate court. Number 3, coincidence that the SEC enforcement director announced his resignation about an hour before this. And guys, this was one of the most disgusting parts about all of this, which I thought was shocking and honestly a little worrying. Earlier today, we actually saw the head of the SEC step down. And while I had been very confident the SEC was not going to appeal this case from the start, When I saw the head of the enforcement division step down, I sat there and I was like, this reminds me so much of when Jay Clayton stepped down and then Ripple got the case immediately after. I was like, there's no way we could see that same exact thing again. There's no way the SEC would do that. That is exactly what happened. The head of the enforcement division stepped down, and what do you know? We get this appeal right after. So, look, I think the most important thing we need to take away from Stuart Alderati and Brad Garlinghouse's comments here is they are going to fight this to the end. They are going to win again. XRP is still not going to be a security, and this is just one big delay tactic. Now, with all that said, I want to get into timelines and exactly what we can expect in terms of a worst and best case scenario, because I think this is probably the most important thing we're going to analyze tonight. When it comes to the best case scenario, it is that Gary Gensler is ousted from the SEC. We get a new chair that comes in and cleans this entire thing up. The new chair comes in, votes to dismiss the appeal. The new chair comes in, votes to settle with Ripple. Some kind of conclusion that is not this case going the distance. I think this is actually something that could be highly likely. I think right now what the SEC might be doing is essentially setting this thing up for Gary Gensler to leave. Who knows? We know Gary Gensler is not going to be there much longer. And if Gary Gensler is gone from the SEC, I don't think this thing is going to the end. I think it's essentially going to be pulled back. The appeal will be pulled back for that matter, or there will be a settlement. With that said, I think it's important that we also take into account what the worst case scenario is. And that is that essentially this entire thing plays out. And according to Fred Rispoli, that means we do not see a ruling in terms of this appeal until early 2026. Now, this would be under the assumption that we had the same exact SEC, that Kamala won the election, kept Gary Gensler, and they continued to fight the cryptocurrency industry. I don't think this is a realistic expectation. In my opinion, it is highly likely that we have a change in the administration, and even if we don't, Gary Gensler is still ousted from the SEC. With that said, this is the worst case scenario. We go to early 2026, and I believe at that point, we will know whether or not this case is once again done. At that point, technically, it could go to the Supreme Court, but I don't even want to get into that right now because I think the chances that us going all the way to the Supreme Court prior to an SEC coming in here and just cleaning things up, getting rid of these cases against good companies, putting in real rules of the road for these companies to follow that make this case pointless, I think that is so much more likely than this case going all the way to the Supreme Court without any of this getting cleaned up. So what we know right now, let's do a quick recap. One, I don't think this is going to hold back XRP's price. Do I think it would have been amazing for XRP's price if this thing was over? Absolutely. I think that would have been the perfect scenario. Didn't happen. It sucks. Whatever. At the end of the day, what's important to understand here is XRP is not a security. This case, no matter what the SEC wins, is not going to affect XRP as a tier 1 digital asset. That won't change. What else do we know? I believe it is highly likely this case is going to get settled at some point, especially if this administration is ousted and or if Gary Gensler is ousted. If one of those two things happen, I think it is highly likely that this case will be dropped, settled, whatever, and we won't have to go all the way to 2026. If none of that happens, if Gary Gensler stays at the SEC, if we have the Biden administration or the Kamala administration in power and they are anti-cryptocurrency and no new cryptocurrency rules get created, then this goes to 26. The good news is I don't think there is any way that the SEC is going to win on any of these issues because their case is just as weak as before. The SEC can't bring new evidence. The SEC can't bring new witnesses. They're stuck with the evidence they brought, which was abysmal, and that's not going to change. The SEC is locked into the same case they were in before. It was a bad case. They never had a chance. And what they are going to do is rehash these same issues at a different level court. Could this be a strategy for the SEC to sucker Ripple into a settlement that's more favorable for them? Maybe. Or is the SEC actually thinking they could win this thing? Obviously, we have to leave that on the table because if they were as irrational as they have been to go this far, anything's possible. But I think the most important thing people need to take away from this is one, XRP's long-term utility is not affected. Two, XRP has performed in this case before in terms of price and can do it again. And 3, it is highly likely that, in my opinion, this thing does get wrapped up by a different SEC, because I don't know how much longer we are going to have the current SEC in place. Guys, this is not the most fun video I have made in a while. Obviously, this is disappointing to a lot of people, but I want people to fully understand. I don't think this really hurts anything over the long run. I was excited to have this thing behind us earlier. I was excited to start focusing on the good things rather than just mitigating the bad things. At the end of the day, we have a little longer to go. We are going to win this. There is no doubt in my mind, and none of this hurts XRP's long-term vision as becoming a brand new liquidity asset for the entire world's financial system. The SEC is trying to stop it because it's that powerful. It's that important, but I don't think they're going to succeed. I'm more confident than ever that Ripple is going to come out on top. The SEC is trying to do everything they can to stall this thing. It's not going to work. We're going to win. Guys, thank you so much for coming. And for now, Mickle out.